Well, and as strong as you clearly are, all of this fighting is to your own detriment of your
It
own
is.
mental health.
It is. You know, you would like to think that when something awful happens, people come around you and hug you and kind of hold you up and say, let's do this, this, and this to help make it better. And the system responds in kind, and everybody is kind of on the same page about which direction we're headed. And in this case, I hear over and over and over again, people just don't have the support that they need through this, partially because of that whole systematic stuff that's going on. And also because this case is so taboo, it's very difficult for people to talk about. And it's even more difficult for people to know how to support. You know, like, what do you do if I tell you, oh my God, this just happened? How do you, as a friend, know what to say to make it better? Because you've never heard of anything like this before. So you don't know how to reply in support. So, in most cases, our families are very much just kind of floundering out here without any of that support or comfort that we need.
It's uncomfortable in a normal death, and people
Yeah.
don't know what to say and how to support, and then you throw all of this in.
Yeah. But I think in most cases, you know, people know how to respond to death itself, even if they don't know what to say about your death. For example, in my son's case, when I would say, my son just died, people would, wrap their arms around me. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Do you have any other children? Oh, well, then it's okay. All of that garbage that, kind of follows. But when I would tell people how he died, it was a very different situation, right? It's like nobody brought me lasagna. There was no meal train for my family. In fact, his GoFundMe raised all of $5 for his memorial fund to bury him. But you get through that and you move forward, and it's okay because you still know your son's at rest. That was one of the things that really brought me comfort after his death. If there was anything that could comfort me, was that I knew my son had been very tormented during his life. He really, really struggled. And now he's finally at peace. And to have this pulled back up and find out that he's not at peace, I can't imagine what my friends are thinking when they're trying to know how to respond. In fact, I've lost 90% of my friends again in the last year and a half. Some of it because people just don't know how to react. Some of it because every conversation I have goes back to this death. This is the hot topic of my life. So if somebody says, "Hey, how are you?" the response is, "Great, we just got it to go to trial." Or "Horrible, we just found this out." Or, it really very much goes back to this case. And people don't know how to react. I have one friend outside of this case that I know I can call and talk to about it. And that's it. And if it wasn't for Tanya, I don't know that I would have made it through the first couple months. In fact, when the FBI called and said, "We're calling about the Penrose Funeral Home case," I thought my kid wasn't at Penrose Funeral Home. So there was a lot of confusion in the beginning anyway for me. And then I started Googling it, and I immediately called Tanya and said, they found, at that time, I believe they thought it was 189 bodies. I said, they found these bodies in the funeral home. The FBI just called me. I know they're not calling me to tell me that he's okay. I know they're calling me. They had scheduled it for 6 o'clock that evening. And I said, I know they're calling me to tell me that they found him. And I remember Tanya just saying, I have no idea what to say. I have no idea how to make this right, but I'm here. And if you think of something, let me know. And she still tells me that now, a year and a half later. She still hasn't figured out how to support me through this. I haven't figured out how to tell her to support me through this, but I know she does because she's there and she's standing at my side, watching me go through all of this and just letting me know it's okay. If you need to call and talk about the yucky stuff, if you need to call and cry, if you need to scream, if you need to laugh about something that's not funny, I'm here for you. And to find an individual like that that will love me through this has been amazing. But I know that there's a lot of people who don't have that. And there should be more of that. This should be something that I can stand in the middle of town square and say, this happened to me, and people know how to support, or that there is an avenue of support. And instead, it's been opposite. November 8th, in fact, they did their first press conference, and the feds, the CBI, and the coroner all said on national news that we were getting all of the help that we needed. And we were getting emails from them saying, I'm sorry, this isn't a qualified crime. So what's happened is that we go to agencies and say, hey, we need help in this situation. And they say, oh, we would, but we heard the FBI. They're helping everybody. Maybe you should get in touch with them to get the help. And it's just become very convoluted. That's been a very difficult part of this process, especially from people who didn't necessarily have trauma attached to the death itself. Because when their loved one passed, they had the support that our community knows how to give during a normal death. And now they're in the situation where they're thinking the same type of support will be here. And people are like, oh God, rotting what? I don't want to hear about it. So yeah, it's been extremely difficult for a lot of us that part of it has been really almost as difficult as the crime itself.
And I want to say, just for anyone listening, Tanya's response to Christina is so good. And if you're ever in that situation, just take that from this podcast and know how to handle that, because I am sure that felt perfect to you. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but
Yeah.
just in general for people listening and wondering, okay, if something happens to someone I know, what do I say?
Yeah.
I was thinking the exact same thing. The people that don't understand what to do, simply, that's okay. You just simply say, I don't understand, but I'm here.
Yeah. I don't know what to do for you, but I'm willing.
Yes.
And, it's funny because Tonya and I are long distance, so I don't get to see her nearly as often as I would love to. Her whole family is just amazing. They're really in a lot of ways, my only family. I don't have a lot of other family around. And that's just kind of become the theme of our friendship is I have no idea, but I'm willing. I'm here. And if you come up with a better idea, let me know. And just having that, there are days that is what gets me through, is knowing that I'm not going to call her and scream because she has other things going on and she doesn't need to hear ear-piercing yells and things like that. But I know that I could, and that's really what I would ask our community to do, is to say, we don't have any idea because we've never looked at anything that looks like this, but we're willing. And if you can tell us what you need from us, here we are.
Yeah. Can I ask you it was a rumor I saw online. It's a little graphic. Is it okay if I ask you? Just because I want it cleared up.
Yeah.
I had read somewhere that someone was saying the Halfords, specifically John, and I don't know who, but they were saying that he was spraying the bodies with lime juice to make them decompose faster. Have you heard that?
I have never heard that. That's a new one. I do know that in a text message, I believe it was in 2020, they were talking about lye. They were talking about, we need to dig a hole and use lye, dig a bigger hole and use fire, or I go to prison, which is probably what's going to happen. And that was a full 3 years before the crime was revealed, and only about a year into the crime timeline. But I've never heard lime juice.
Maybe that's what they meant.
Maybe. One of the problems with information being withheld, and again, I understand the integrity of the case and needless trauma. So I'm not too upset about them not revealing some of the information and the facts of the case, right? They have to protect that. By they, I mean the investigation team. But part of the downfall of information not being shared is that people will grab onto what they can understand and turn that into their truth and then share it, which then becomes a truth. And in this case, we've heard a lot of those types of things that just aren't true at all. But there's so many gaps to fill that people's brains go where they'll go. And especially in a case where the information that we know is very graphic and very hard to hear, it's easier to come up with some of those things that, well, if this part's graphic, this part must be too. So I'm not sure about lime juice. I haven't heard anything about lime juice. I have heard that they intended to use lye. I have been told by the powers that be that there were no chemicals in the building, but I do not have any reason to believe that is true. I have every reason to believe that there were chemical processes happening inside the building.
Another question that I kept seeing, and so I want this to be as factual as possible, obviously, with whatever you can share. Another thing that I saw was a lot of people saying, how did this happen? Weren't people coming in and out of that funeral home? How did it get to be 4 years if they were conducting business and funerals and things surrounding funerals? So how?
Yeah, good question. So they had multiple locations, and I talked earlier about the other location that they had purchased. They actually purchased they had a location in Colorado Springs, and they purchased a location down south. I believe in Canyon City. I want to say that was in January of 2019. Around March or April, that deal fell through. Now, at the time, the funeral home had signs up saying return to nature. The old website from the other funeral home said we are now return to nature. But then in March or April, maybe May, sometime in the spring, that business deal fell through, presumably because John and Carrie didn't have the money to keep it going. And at that point, they purchased Return to Nature, or at least moved over to there. There's been some talk that they rented it, some talk that they bought it. I don't know the truth of those, but I knew they took occupancy of Return to Nature Penrose location sometime very early summer of 19. Our loved ones were never supposed to be in Penrose. I knew they had another location. I was under the impression they were in the middle of a move. And that came into play when I asked for my son's hair and fingerprints back. It took them a year to get that for me. I didn't get it until October of 20. And we hounded them pretty good about it. But we kept being told it was in storage. I don't know at what point everything kind of switched over completely. But again, our loved ones weren't even supposed to be in Penrose. So it wasn't like people were having their funeral services in Penrose or going in and out of the building, things like that. All of those things were happening in their Colorado Springs location. People have also asked like how the employees didn't know. I've talked to a couple of their former employees, and I will say that I don't find any of them complicit in this. I think there were some mistakes that were made by a couple of the employees, but they didn't rise to the level of criminality. And I think they are very separate. They were administrative mistakes, paperwork mistakes, things like that. But for me, they're very separate than the crime of having 191 bodies hidden and stacked. In fact, in November of 22, their license ran out, and John made it very well known in the industry that Penrose location was no more. He told some people that he sold it. He told some people that it closed down. He told some people that he had rented it to somebody else. But the point was that nobody knew that to be John's location anymore. Nobody believed that to be returned to nature anymore.
So you think all of the other employees and anything, they were all at the other location?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I think there were some things with paperwork that were going on that shouldn't have, forms that weren't properly filled out, things like that. But I think it was very much out of ignorance and just trusting when John and Carrie said, sign this, don't sign that, as young people in the industry that may not have had the training and background that they should have. They tended to trust what John and Carrie said rather than willful criminal intent. But they weren't. Colorado Springs and the Penrose location are quite a distance, 45 minutes or so. So it wasn't something where, somebody worked at the Colorado Springs location and then had occasion to drop by the Penrose location on the way home from work, or, let me just pop over there and grab this, that kind of thing. They were very separate and distinct locations that weren't just right on the way for each other.
And what about Carrie? Do you think she is equally? I mean, we've heard on the show that they think John was the one putting the bodies in the fridge and all that. She obviously had to know. Do you think she had just as much involvement, or do you personally believe she was more administrative as well?
I struggle with that because in court at her preliminary, they listed off a bunch of dates and times that the phones pinged at the Penrose location. And by my count, Carrie was there more often, and she was there more often alone. I don't know if she was there slinging bodies or if she was there to pray over her husband's handiwork. I have no idea. But it tells me that she was complicit to a degree. I believe that she definitely, I know that she definitely knew by 2020 what was going on, because the texts back and forth to each other show that they're talking about what they're going to do to fix it. So that tells me that she knew what he was doing or was engaging in it with him to some degree. And they both had a guilty conscience about that, because they're both talking about getting rid of the bodies with a new machine, lie or fire, or they go to prison. So for at least 3 years, she knew what was going on. And in the beginning of this, I very much held John, I don't want to say fully responsible. I didn't think that Carrie was innocent, but I put the majority of the responsibility on John's shoulders. Was very angry with Carrie later down the line when I started realizing how many people had face-to-face interaction with her. My case was a little bit different. I never met John. I never met Carrie. I talked to her on the phone a few times. She was not pleasant with me, but I didn't know. I knew that the woman I was talking to was Carrie, but I didn't know Carrie was the co-owner. I just figured it was some disgruntled employee that was going to be kind of nasty to me because she didn't care about her job. I didn't know that she was the one running the location. Many of my friends now have detailed their interactions with her where she was the one who signed the paperwork with them. She was the one on the phone. She was the one sitting across the table and saying, we are going to take very good care of your father. Your child is in good hands. Don't worry. We're going to plant a tree on the mountainside. So that scale of culpability, I guess, has very much evened out for me, knowing that he may have been the one that did it, but she was the one who brought the victims to him. At any point, she could have said, stop. I don't want to take your child because I know he's going to end up dumped out of his body bag in the corner of an inoperable fridge under 40 other people. And she didn't. She continued to sign those contracts and make promises to people who were in the most vulnerable positions of their life. And she did that as a mother. And that's the part that really gets to me. I would love to have a conversation with her to find out how that initial conversation between the two of them happened And maybe that would change my mind about her level of culpability. But she did this as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, knowing what she was doing to other children and husbands and parents. So I have no love in my heart for either one of them. I think he's just been a scammy dirtbag for a lot longer than she is. We've talked to rape victims of his all the way back to 1996, ex-wives that outlined abuse and manipulation and things like that. So this was not his first crime. This may be the first that he's being held accountable for what he's doing, but he's committed crimes for at least 30 years.
Did
He
you
has
have a
quite a
question?
trail of wreckage in his past.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Amy, from before?
Oh, no. No, I was just going to say something. I don't remember what I was going to say now.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I was just building off of what we were talking about. Do you think, and this is a good thing, I think, do you think that your group and all of you pushing through this case had anything to do with the laws that were changed after this? So previous to the case, and please correct me if I'm wrong, embalmers and funeral homes weren't required to be licensed, and now they are.
Kind of. The funeral home itself, if I understand it correctly, because there's a lot of legal ease that I don't quite understand. My understanding is that the funeral home itself had to be licensed. So the building had to be licensed. There had to be certain requirements met for that. But you and I don't have to be licensed. So what that means is if you and I are watching a true crime and we're like, oh, we could do that better, we should go get a funeral home. In Colorado, to register your business, it's $50 to the Secretary of State. Takes about 10 minutes, and you get a certificate of good standing before you even hit enter, almost, right? Before your card clears. So if you and I want to have a flower shop, we can log online. You put in your $25, I put in my $25. We pay the state the $50, and now we are the proud owners of a florist. We could do the same to run a funeral home, and we wouldn't even have to have a brick and mortar. So if we were sitting here at noon and decided that we wanted to be funeral directors, by 12:30, we could take our first body and we could go pick up the body from the coroner, process it with the correct paperwork, drop it off at the crematorium, pick up the ashes later, and take them to the family. All of that without even having a building. All we need is that $50 registration with the state. There were things in place, to my knowledge, things like drainage and refrigeration time requirements and things like that applied to the building itself. Now, they've passed 3 laws. One of them deals with licensing, one is dealing with education, and one is dealing with body donations for medical purposes. And our group absolutely had a hand in that. And I use the term our group very loosely in that sense, that we have the group Colorado Remembers that has spun out of group in return to nature. But there are also people who were victim in this case and others who are not part of Colorado Remembers, who also showed up for testimony and met with legislators and things like that. I showed up and testified a few times. I tried to make it to as many of the meetings as I could. And I think my testimony had an impact, but there were several other people who spent so many more hours than I possibly could have. Specifically, 2 women named Sheila and Abby. They put in so much effort into the legislative part of the process. I don't think we ever would have gotten as far as we did or had as much success as we did in the legislator sessions if they had not been involved. So that credit really goes to them. They made it their life mission to get some of this pushed through. And prior to our case even being a case, when Sunset Mesa happened, those victims pushed through in a similar manner, and they were able to get it on the desk so that people would even pay attention to any of this. When they were victimized, abuse of a corpse was only a misdemeanor charge. So the perpetrators, Hess and Cott, in that case, didn't even have state charges. So because of the way that those victims fought, it became a felony charge so that we even have a case in Return to Nature. So it really has been a series of victims continuing to fight to get to where we are now. And we're still not happy with where we are now. Two of the things that I really want to see go through legislation have to do with the crematoriums themselves, which are a checks and balance system. One, that the crematorium has to actually identify the body they're getting ready to cremate. That's not a thing in Colorado right now. And secondly, that they then have to report back to the state saying that the cremation did in fact happen. And I think if either one of those two things had happened in our case, it wouldn't have gone as far as it did. And certainly they wouldn't have cremated bodies that were then actually found in the building. Nobody knows who was actually cremated.
Do you want to tell people what to look for? So if your loved one is being cremated, what should you receive to know you have the right person?
Absolutely. I know it varies across state, but in Colorado, and in really most reputable places that we've come across, you really should get paperwork that says that the cremation happened and who was cremated, what day and time they were cremated, and by who. In Colorado, that also comes with a cremation certificate, and it's sometimes very administrative looking. Other times it looks like a certificate you would print up on your computer, but you should have something saying John was cremated on this date at this time by this person, or at least this agency. And in Colorado, you should also get a shiny metal tag. It looks similar to a rabies tag in the sense that it'll have those digits, the numerical portion on the silver tag. Sometimes it has a letter prior to it that designates the agency that did the cremation. And that tag in Colorado would be zip tied to the outside. In our case, many of our loved ones' cremation remains did not come with the certificate or the tag, or if there was a tag, it was buried inside the bag. Both of those are huge red flags. That should not happen.
Okay. I think that's good for people to know because I wouldn't know that.
Right. We didn't know that. And I'm a pit bull, especially when it comes to my child, and more so my dead child. So if I had known, I should have gotten a cremation certificate and a metal tag. If I hadn't gotten that, I would have marched down there and not left until they gave it to me, or figured out, or I would have called the crematory and said, hey, where's my tag? I don't think I even would have gone after John and Carrie. I think I would have gone to the crematory and said, where's my tag? Where's my certificate? What did you do? And they would have said, we don't know who your kid is. We didn't do it. And it would have stopped it 2 weeks into this whole thing. I think that's where my guilt lies in this case, is that if I had only known what we should have gotten during cremation, I would have spoken up. And there's 190 other families who I think feel the same. If any one of us would have known that we were supposed to have a tag and a sticker, we all would have said something.
Right. And that's why
They got away with it because of the ignorance in the community.
Yeah.
Because you assume, just like when you're getting married, you assume that the pastor's going to know what your vows are supposed to be. You know, it's follow the leader. He says, do you, and then you say you do. You know, in a baptism, it's the same thing. You trust that the person in charge is going to walk you through that. And how much more so during a death, the subsequent processes of the funeral and the memorialization, that we should be able to trust that that person knows what's right and wrong and that they're going to treat us as such. And instead, they very much preyed on our ignorance.
Yeah. Is there anything else about the case that you want to talk about specifically? But I want to make sure we cover. So and on the show it said that they both pled guilty to crimes and they were both up for 20 years. However, I think, isn't John's sentencing next month, but Carrie's got pushed. Is that correct?
Well, we've had a bunch of changes, and it was real confusing last week because one thing would change and then somebody else would respond to that change with a new change, and we got very convoluted for a minute. Back in October and November, we had the plea agreement hearings in federal and then in state, one back to back. And at that time, the intention, or the expectation rather, was that John and Carrie would show up. They would say, yes, we plead guilty and we agree to this plea agreement. That plea agreement, because of the federal sentencing timeline, or guidelines rather, I believe it was somewhere around 61 months to 15 years. So the plea agreement was that the government wouldn't ask for more than 15 years and the defense wouldn't ask for less than that 61 months. We were under the impression that the judge would, at that time, accept the plea agreement and then set it for sentencing in March, and then November and April for state. I objected to the plea agreement in open court in federal, and basically said, I'm not objecting to the plea agreement because I know that this is the best we can get, but I'm objecting to a system that makes this the best we can get. Their federal charges started out as 15 counts, the first 12 being wire fraud against the families, the 13th being conspiracy to commit wire fraud, the 14th being the COVID wire fraud, and the 15th being the conspiracy for that. And my understanding is that they dismissed all charges except for the 13th, which is the conspiracy to commit wire fraud. So that's what they're being sentenced based on. So we were pissed. How do you take all of this that's happened and break it down into one count and a 15-year term? So I objected, and the judge decided to hold off accepting the plea agreement until sentencing, which was scheduled for March 20th. We just had a status conference, I think is what they called it, last Tuesday. And at that time, the judge notified the courtroom that the court is not bound to that plea agreement and that they would not be bound to that 15-year request. So they gave the defense a couple options. One, they could move forward and still accept the plea agreement as it stood, knowing that she can sentence them to longer than those 15 years, or they could take it to trial. John chose to continue his guilty plea. So he will have his sentencing on June 27th in Denver federal court. And Carrie chose to take it to trial. So her trial is scheduled for 10 days beginning September 8th.
Okay.
So we still have April 18th is, at this time, stands our sentencing in the state charges. And that's 191 counts of abuse of a corpse, 15 to 20 years for Carrie and 20 years for John. And at this time, we believe that that's still on schedule. The problem for us with that is that is 15 or 20 years for 191 counts, which seems very low for us. And it's to run concurrent with the federal sentencing. So if they serve federal time at about 80%, let's say the judge upward departs and gives them 20 years. That means that they'll serve 15, roughly. And then if they get 15 to 20 years in state, they'll serve about 25% of that. So let's say 5 years. With those running concurrent, then the federal time literally swallows up the state time. So they're not serving not a single minute for their state crimes.
So frustrating.
It is. So we're really I say fighting, but there's really not much of a fight to it. We're really hoping that the judge in the state case sentences them consecutively rather than concurrently.
Right. Obviously, we hope that for you as well.
Yeah, thank you. Send that energy out, because I think, again, that's where we almost feel re-victimized. You know, how does the state stand up in court and sentence them to time that's not going to be served?
Yeah.
It really almost feels like a slap in the face.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get a little deep here if we're all ready. So when we spoke a month ago, you had said, and I wrote down quotes, so I want to read this because I don't want to misspeak, but you had said that some of the families were having dreams and thinking that their loved ones weren't at rest because of what happened with their physical bodies. And some of you were concerned that their souls are lost because there was no proper burial, or whatever religious beliefs they had, their bodies weren't handled in that manner. And so there was some concern about their souls. And I reached out to a friend of mine, and I'm going to pull up my texts. She's a medium. I asked her to watch the episode, and she did. And she also consulted another friend of ours who's a medium. So I'm going to tell you kind of what they both said. So one of them said that, okay, and I'm just going to again quote this because I don't want to misspeak. I never felt anything in that episode that made me feel that they're stuck. I did feel that multiple bodies were burned together and that no one really got their families. And I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what one of them said. She reiterated and said that watching the episode, she didn't get any feelings of lost or stuck anybody. Again, she's not physically there, but she doesn't really need to be.
Yeah.
She can sort of tap into that remotely. And then our other friend said she felt that, I'm going to read this. I feel maybe a piece of them could be stuck, but the majority of them are met with ancestors and angels to help them cross over. And I feel like that's what happened here. 9 out of 10 times, the spirit will follow their loved ones. And she said there'd be no reason for them to be there. If they're there, it's not because they're stuck. It's because they're choosing to stay there, maybe to fight. So they both said similar, like, feelings of everybody.
I think what this case brought up for a lot of us, you know, I've been in a pretty big spiritual battle since my son died. Most of the people around me told me that my son was in hell because of how he died. Because, of course, that's where you're going if you get killed by police, because you're a monster. And it took me about a year and a lot of counseling with my friend Jason Patrick to understand that that wasn't accurate. But this threw me into another huge spiritual battle of, I really thought I had laid my son to rest. I thought I had pushed him down his path to peace in cremating him and spreading him all over the country and taking him on these grand adventures and things. I really thought I had honored him and let him go. But, you know, what do you say to my friend whose grandmother was a perfect Catholic woman who had never shown her ankles to any man other than her husband, and had very strict ways of her body being processed upon death? And now those things didn't happen. Well, if she had chosen not to have it completed, or her family had, according to her religion, she'd be in purgatory. She doesn't get to cross over because she didn't do it right. And what John and Carrie did was take that from those families and leaves these families wondering, what happened to grandma's spirit? Does she get to cross over because God knew that she wasn't the one who made the choice? Or is she stuck because the choice was made? I think whatever your religion or your spiritual beliefs are, you can understand how we would question that. I will tell you, I can't count the number of people who have told me that they would have dreams of searching for their loved one after the death. I had that dream constantly. I was always looking for David. I wasn't missing him. I wasn't upset I mean, I was, but these dreams weren't about missing him. They were about him missing, him not where he was supposed to be. And it was strange because I have his urn. I have what's supposed to be all of him. But he would never come to me in my dreams. And I always had this feeling like he was lost. I've talked to several people who would pass the Penrose building on their way traveling back and forth to work or family or whatever. And remember, our loved ones were not supposed to be in Penrose. And they would get like chills as they passed Penrose, or they would have nightmares the night after they were in Penrose about their loved ones missing. I was on a Zoom call one time a little over a year ago, and there were 4 of us on that were joking about playing Where's Waldo? And all 4 of us had had recurring dreams about Waldo, about our loved ones wearing the little Waldo hat. I think that's been a kind of a theme amongst at least many of our victims, not necessarily most. I have a very small data set. Out of those 1,200 people, I only talked to a couple hundred of those. But that's been a recurring theme for many of us, that feeling of missing or lost or wandering. And again, that's one of the questions that we can't possibly answer because it's based on spiritual belief rather than scientific fact. But what we do know is that science says that their bodies were physically still there in conditions that were deplorable. So it really makes you wonder, therefore, what was their spirit doing?
Well,
But
and
I
it's
think
hard because you do have so many different religious beliefs here
Mhm.
because of the number of people, obviously,
Right.
and everyone and every religion believes something different.
Yeah.
Almost every, and Amy and I know multiple mediums, and I would say that every single one of them believes the physical body is just a vessel. And when you pass, your soul goes somewhere else. And so what happens to that vessel after, even if you think of cremation,
Mhm.
just in itself, your soul's not in there, So I hope that, I don't know if that gives any of you any comfort to know that reliable mediums both said they don't see anyone stuck there.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I think too, though, and I don't say this for anything but transparency, I think one of the things that I hear a lot from victims is that when we have people who, we'll share the story with, a lot of times we'll hear back. And I'm not saying this is what you're doing at all by any means, but people will say, but it's just their body, and it almost feels like it minimizes what we're going through because of that level of uncertainty, because we don't know, and because even if we do know, imagine seeing roadkill or a puppy hit on the side of the road. Nobody goes over and says, well, it's okay, it's just the fur, you know. So again, it goes back to that idea of this being so taboo and so out of the norm for our society that there aren't answers like that. Not only do we not know exactly what John and Carrie did to our loved ones, especially in the case of those 1,000, but we don't know what the consequences for us even were of those actions, because you can put 10 people in a room together and have 12 different ideas about what happened before death and after. So I appreciate you sharing it with me. It does bring comfort, and I know it'll bring a lot of people comfort, because it's something that, it's so hard to know who to trust now. This case has rocked our trust. There are days where I have to look at the ground before I step out of bed to make sure that the floor is still there, because I don't trust anything. So to have people that you trust say that is very comforting, and I know it will be to a lot of other people, but there's no certainty. There's and what may be truth for me might be not comforting or even not truth to somebody else, because of the way that their spirituality or their religion is. And that's one of the things that's so hard about this case, is that these people did not pick a sect of people. They did this to men, women, Black, white, Christian, Catholic, atheist, agnostic. They did this to fetuses and 20-year-olds and 100-year-olds. Their victimology in this spanned such a great distance with who they chose as their victims, that nobody in our community was safe during this time, and we didn't even know that it was happening.
And I'm glad you said that about the physical body and how you all feel about it, because I didn't necessarily see it from that perspective, and I want to hear everything, how you feel, so I don't take that personally at all.
Yeah. And like I said, it is comforting, and I know it will be to some, and other people won't care, because there's just such a span of belief. But that's been one of the difficult things in this case, is because people don't know how to respond. They respond in whatever way makes sense to them, because we're humans, and that's what we do, right? We hear any message, we hear it, we process it, and we respond in a way that we think is appropriate. Except that when you get stuck on that understanding part of it, your brain still wants to spit something out that's comforting. You still want to tell your friend it'll be okay. But if you get lost in that understanding loop, sometimes you just stutter there and say something that just doesn't make sense or isn't comforting, even if it's not with that intention. I have a friend, Shane, in Hawaii, and he and I were talking just a couple of days ago over the phone. I asked him how he was doing, and he's like, I'm changed forever, and I'll never be the same person again. And we talk about how this really has changed the core of who we are. And he'll tell me all the time, the worst thing that somebody can say is, it was just a body. Because for me, that body is the body that I gave birth to, and potty trained, and fed Cheerios to, and ran through the park with, and, kissed his boo-boos. That body is what I saw every single time I interacted with my child. So when something like this happens, it's hard to separate. His soul is okay, even though his body is trash, because that body that's now treated like trash is the one that I held. When I looked at him, I didn't see his soul. I saw his beautiful eyes. I saw his dimples and his laugh. I saw his wobbly run when he was a toddler. I saw him grow into this man. All of that was his body, So it's, again, one of those complexities of this case, that it's hard to understand when you're not going through this, because how could you possibly understand?
Right. And everyone's always well-intentioned. And I learned this too with my niece. It's just anyone that hasn't been through it, they just don't know what to say, and they don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times I think that's true. I think people want so badly to either comfort or to get it out of the way so they don't have to hear about it anymore. I think that's a lot of people's way of trying to bring that comfort is it's okay because it's okay because they were only there for a short time. It's okay because their soul is at rest. It's okay because it's just a body. It's okay because they're being charged. It's okay because they're in jail now. It's okay because you guys have this fantastic new group that's leaning on each other. Well, all of those may be positive things, but none of that makes it okay. And I don't know what will. I don't know that there is anything that will take away the nightmares or undo the harm that John and Carrie have done to us.
Yeah.
Even if we had scientific proof that on the day that they dumped my child out of his body bag, his soul was already gone and it was just his meat suit. It's still to know that that body that I held for 20 years was treated in that manner doesn't make me feel more comforted about his soul. I mean, it does to a degree, but it barely touches on it because of the atrocities that happened.
That makes sense. I hear you. And
Yeah,
thank you for
this case it's a crazy case. It is insane where your mind will take you trying to process something like this about your loved one.
yeah. Okay. I think, do we want to circle back and talk about the park and
Sure.
raising funds, which we hope to help with,
That'd be
and
great.
talk about when we spoke a month ago, the whole point or the purpose of the park with all of the ashes and everything, if you want to make sure
Yeah.
you talk about that.
So, Colorado Remembers came to be actually because of another crime, Apollo, here in Colorado. In that case, Miles Harford was evicted from his home in Denver. And during the eviction process, they towed the hearse to the front of the house and they found the body of Mrs. Christina Rosales in the back of his hearse. I met George, her husband, at some press conference type stuff down at the Capitol during legislation. We agreed that we need to come together to make some changes at the state level and in our communities and things like that. And we continued to talk, and he was at the time considered the primary in the Apollo case. There were something like the cremated remains of, I think, 35 people also found in Miles' possession. But at the time, he was being treated as kind of the primary. So he felt very alone in that case and didn't feel like he had a lot of support. Because again, it's one thing to say, my wife just died. Society knows how to respond to that. My wife's body was just found 18 months after she was cremated is a very different community response. So we agreed we needed to come together. Somebody approached us very shortly after that and said that they could potentially give us a share of up to a very large plot of land. So we came together, we formed a board, we got official with our 501c3 at the state and federal level, and got more than 100 people to sign in support in less than 7 days, got a site plan together, had multiple meetings, and figured out exactly what we were going to do. We decided that it would be a 20-acre memorial garden park, similar to like a state park, where you can come in and see a visitor center, where you can watch videos about the crime and about how it happened and get educated on legislation and why this is important, things like that, similar to what you would see at a state or national park. And then also have the memorial garden itself, different places that would honor within the park, different spiritualities and different religions and beliefs, rock garden, fountains, things like that. Camping area so that people can come from out of state. A lot of our victims, you have to remember, the bodies that were found or that are missing all died in Colorado and were supposed to be cremated or buried in Colorado, but they have loved ones scattered all over the country. So we wanted to make it easier for someone from out of town to come and visit the memorial grounds and be able to have a place to pitch a tent, things like that. We really put a lot of thought and effort into exactly how we would do this to make it a welcoming, open spot that would honor not just our dead, but also those of us who are still living. I need a place where I can go and know that I'm not fighting alone. And every single person standing next to me needs that also. We also, part of it that we wanted to integrate was, I keep calling it the well. Carol reminds me quite often that we did not agree it would be a well, some type of receptacle where we can open it up and dump the ashes of the person that we received. So, for example, I don't know yet what I'm going to do with my son's ashes. I already thought I took a 450,000-mile road trip, taking him to the ends of the earth and back. I don't know if I'm ready to let him go again. I feel like I get kind of a second chance to do that right again. And I don't think I could possibly do it the same way that I did the first time. The first time was perfect. Second time, I don't think I can recreate. So I don't know if I would spread my son, but I am carrying Grandma Fido. And because that's someone else's loved one, I want that person to be honored in a way that truly respects their wishes. I can't do that. It is not possible for me to do that because I don't have any way of knowing what their wishes were or the wishes of the family because of the lack of identity. So the idea is, if I take Grandma Fido and you take Joe and you take Susie, and we dump all of those cremation remains into that well-like receptacle, if Joe is mine and Grandma Fido is yours and Susie is yours, now all three of those are there to be visited by each of us. So that was the kind of the idea behind that, is that even though we don't know who we have, the more people who take what we did receive to a central location, the better the odds are that when you go to that location, you're also there in presence with your own loved one. Again, that's the other half of what Colorado Remembers is doing. We're doing the mental health support and the networking and the leaning into each other and the education and all of that. But our big long-term goal, our permanent goal, I guess, is getting that memorial garden set up so that we can honor our dead, the ones that were identified and the ones that have not been found, from this case and the other cases that have continued to go on in Colorado, and build a place of remembrance and support for them, but also in honor of our fight, because we are going through something that is almost unfathomable. We're trying real hard to raise the money so that we can do that, or to find a really generous farmer who has decided that his cows need 5 less acres. Our original plan was a 20 or 25 acre plan, but that was because that's what we were told that we were being given. Unfortunately, they had to pull that offer because they didn't have the legal authority to give us the land that they were offering us. So a little bit of a snafu, mildly important in the grand scheme of things, but we can do our site plan with as small as an acre. So we're really looking for the financial backing or support, even if that's dollar donations one at a time, or for somebody who has a small piece of land to donate that. And again, we're a 501c3, so we can give a tax write-off for that so that we can start to build. Once we have the dirt, the plot of land itself, the rest of it, we are going to need some funding. But we also have a lot of people willing to put in some sweat equity. So things like building the visitor center, for example, we would need the money or the donations for the materials, but we have people who will come out and build it for us, including ourselves, swinging hammers and digging with shovels as it is. That's the idea, is for us to put together a memorial park so that we can truly honor our fight through this and the memories of both the dead and the living who are still having to go through this together.
What area are you looking in case someone does have any land?
Anywhere in Colorado. It does need to be in Colorado because this is a Colorado-based organization. Unfortunately, we're seeing cases like this popping up continuously all across the country. Our focus is Colorado. And we would like to try to keep it as central as possible, somewhere like El Paso or Elbert County. Even Teller or Fremont County is still very close to the scene of this crime. But we have a lot of flexibility in that, unfortunately, these cases are not limited to that area. But Mesa was all the way out in Montrose on the western slope, and Apollo was up in Denver, where I currently live. So we're trying to get it more towards central or southern Colorado, just because that's where the majority of the people who are involved in the nonprofit and the founding members tend to live. But anywhere in the state of Colorado, we're not picky. And we are also looking at the potential of even having small spots kind of scattered throughout the state where, other places will host even just a billboard or a kiosk type thing. And in that way, we wouldn't need the large area of land. We would use, this business's front yard and that business's side room and that sort of thing. So we're willing to be very creative. But again, ideally, if we had our way and it was a perfect world, we'd be looking at 5 acres or so in Elbert or El Paso counties.
Okay. Did I miss anything?
We
Amy,
just
do you have
need that.
anything?
We just need that one generous farmer. I am convinced. I told them that when we got the news May of last year that it wasn't going to go through like we intended and planned. I told them then, I am believing that there is a rich farmer out there who just has a couple acres laying around that their cows aren't using, and that's what we're hoping for. But we will take pennies also.
Yes.
Yes. But it will happen.
Amy, did I miss anything? Do you have any questions? I know I just kept going.
No, I just want to say again how much I adore you, and I have so much respect for you and everything that you have done and the voice that you have put out there.
Thank you. It means a lot. It's this is the hardest thing that I've ever gone through. And there are many, many days that I wake up and wonder what twilight zone I'm in today. The one thing that keeps me going, and I think keeps a lot of the victims going, is knowing that each time we speak, somebody new is hearing it and is able to either offer support or be supported by that. We have a lot of new victims that are just finding out about the case because of the podcasts or the documentaries and the social media and things like that that we're putting out there. We just had one person whose daughter was a potential victim who just found out about this case about a week or 2 ago. So here we are, a year and a half in, and there are still so many of those 6,000 people that we talked about that are just now even finding out. So it means a lot to have the avenue to make that happen so that we can still continue not just to reach out to the community for support, but so that somebody who might hear this might say, oh my goodness, Colorado Springs, that's where Joe is, and look into it and find out that their family has been affected so that they can get the help that they need now, rather than finding out about this 5 or 10 years down the road in some off the wall news article. And now they don't know how to respond because that time of response is gone, So it means a lot. I really appreciate you guys being here for that.
You're so welcome.
Yeah. So I don't know. Did we miss anything? Did we cover it? Like, did you have anything in mind specific that we maybe didn't talk about? I want to make
No, I don't
sure.
think so.
Okay.
There's so much with this case that it would take days,
Yeah.
many, many 12-hour days to go through all of it. But I think we got most of it.
Okay, good.
Well, we're definitely open to updates too.
Absolutely. And as more, there's a lot of information that we do have that we're not able to share right now because of that. Because, for example, imagine the person who's just finding out about the case now, finding out all of the case now, going from kind of 0 to 100. That's part of what we've been trying to avoid. We want to get out enough information that people understand the impact so that we can get the kind of support and help that we need through this and offer that to other people as well. But we also don't want to put out certain things that would be extremely traumatizing to someone just finding out the basic information. But as the case goes, and particularly as it goes through trial, a lot more of that will be released and we'll be able to open up and talk about that a lot more freely too.
Okay. Yeah, there will be a round two for sure later, probably later this year.
Absolutely.
So everyone go check out any of the information, the Facebook page, the GoFundMe, all of that. Throw your support, however that looks for you and what you're able to do. They will appreciate any of it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll meet back here in a week. Thank you, everybody.
It was so nice to meet you, Christina.
You too. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.